This man taught millions about detachment and inner peace. His voice guided countless people through existential crises. Oxford-educated, expert on Eastern philosophy, author of over 25 books and articles on religion and philosophy, Alan Watts made ancient wisdom accessible to an entire generation searching for meaning. Oh, he also drank a bottle of wine every day, smoked constantly, and died at 58 from alcohol-related causes. So, here's the question that keeps coming up. Should you trust a drunk philosopher? Can someone who clearly couldn't manage his own life teach you how to manage yours? It's a fair question. In our wellness-obsessed culture, we expect spiritual teachers to be living proof that their methods work. Clean living, perfect discipline, glowing health. When they're not, it feels like false advertising. Today, we're going to figure out if wisdom requires perfection, or if that expectation is missing the point entirely. Because the answer might change how you think about teachers, wisdom, and what it actually means to be human. Let's start with why this bothers people. Because it should bother people. Alan Watts taught about non-attachment. The core idea: suffering comes from clinging to things, people, experiences. Let go of your desperate need to control life, and you'll find peace. Solid advice. Meanwhile, the man giving this advice was clearly attached to alcohol, not just fond of it, not just enjoying a glass of wine with dinner, dependent on it, unable to function without it. By any reasonable definition, addicted to it. That's not just ironic. It's hypocritical. It's like a debt counselor who's drowning in credit card bills, or a marriage therapist who can't maintain a relationship. The messenger contradicts the message. And Watts had other issues too. 3 failed marriages, chronic money problems, a reputation for sleeping around that earned him the nickname Alan Watts, the womanizer, in some circles. Not exactly the resume you'd expect from someone teaching about spiritual wisdom and inner peace. Here's the thing about credibility. It matters. When someone's teaching you how to live, you naturally look at how they're living. Are they calmer than you? Happier? More at peace? Do they seem to have figured something out that you haven't? By most conventional measures, Watts hadn't figured it out. He was anxious, often depressed, struggling with the same basic human problems as everyone else, just with better vocabulary to describe them. So, the skeptics have a point. If wisdom is about self-mastery, inner peace, transcending your lower impulses, then Watts wasn't particularly wise. He was just an articulate mess with good insights about other people's problems. The biblical principle applies here. You will know them by their fruits. What were Watts' fruits? Broken relationships, addiction, early death? Not exactly what you'd call a good harvest. Maybe the real question isn't whether he was wise, but whether he was just a talented entertainer who happened to read a lot of Eastern philosophy. A performer, not a practitioner. But hold on. Before we write him off completely, let's look at what Watts actually taught, because there might be a disconnect between what people think he was selling and what he was actually offering. First thing to understand. Watts never claimed to be a guru. He called himself a philosophical entertainer. He said his job was to wonder about the nature of reality and invite others to wonder along with him. That's very different from claiming to have answers. Second, his teaching wasn't about self-improvement. It wasn't about becoming a better person, achieving enlightenment, or transcending your human nature. It was about understanding what you already are. Here's a key quote. "The point is not to become a different person, but to find out who you really are. Not self-help, self-understanding." When Watts talked about non-attachment, he wasn't teaching people to eliminate their desires and addictions. He was teaching them to see those desires and addictions as natural phenomena, like weather patterns in consciousness. He'd say something like, "You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your addictions. You are the awareness that observes all of these things. That includes observing your own anxiety, your own attachments, your own struggles, without trying to fix them." This is crucial. Most spiritual teaching says, "You have a problem. Here's how to solve it." Watts said, "You think you have a problem, but that thinking is the actual problem." He taught integration, not elimination. Instead of trying to transcend your human nature, accept it completely. Your neuroses, your addictions, your failures are all part of the cosmic dance. Fighting them just creates more suffering. From this perspective, his alcohol problem wasn't a contradiction of his teaching. It was a demonstration of it. He observed his own addiction with the same detached awareness he applied to everything else. He didn't try to be someone he wasn't. The man literally said, "I am a genuine fake." He knew he was flawed and didn't pretend otherwise. That wasn't failure, that was honesty. When you understand this, his lifestyle makes perfect sense. He wasn't trying to be a perfect example of enlightened living. He was showing what it looks like to be completely honest about being human. So here's where things get interesting. What if Watts' struggles didn't disqualify him from teaching wisdom? What if they were exactly why he was qualified? Think about it this way. Would you rather get advice about dealing with anxiety from someone who's never experienced it, or from someone who lives with it daily and has learned to work with it? Watts didn't speak about suffering from an academic distance. He spoke about it from the inside. When he talked about the futility of trying to control your thoughts, he knew what he was talking about because he'd tried and failed thousands of times. His addiction gave him intimate knowledge of attachment, not the theoretical kind you get from reading books, but the visceral understanding that comes from feeling something grab you by the throat and not let go. He understood craving, withdrawal, the way your mind tricks you into thinking just one more will solve everything. He knew how desire works because he was caught in its web. That made him an expert, not a fraud. There's an old archetype called the wounded healer. The idea that those who can help others are often the ones struggling with the same problems. They teach what they most need to learn. Think about AA sponsors. They're not people who've never had drinking problems. They're people who understand alcoholism from the inside and have found ways to live with it. Their credibility comes from their struggle, not from their perfection. Watts was teaching a similar principle on a philosophical level. Instead of Alcoholics Anonymous, it was more like Humans Anonymous. "Hi, I'm Alan, and I'm a human being with all the messy complications that entails." In our Instagram perfect world, we're surrounded by teachers who present only their best selves. Flawless morning routines, perfect diets, Instagram-worthy meditation spaces. They figured it all out, or at least they want you to think they have. Maybe what we actually need is the opposite. Teachers who show you it's possible to be wise and screwed up at the same time, who give you permission to seek truth while remaining beautifully, messily human. Watts wasn't selling you a perfect life. He was selling you acceptance of an imperfect one, and his own imperfections were the proof that it worked. So what's the takeaway here? Should you trust Alan Watts or not? Here's the thing. Watts wasn't asking you to trust him. He was asking you to trust your own experience. His whole philosophy boiled down to pay attention to what's actually happening in your life, not what you think should be happening. That includes paying attention to your teachers. Don't follow them blindly. Don't put them on pedestals. They're human beings with human problems, just like you. Watts said it himself. The point is not to become a follower of some teacher, but to become your own teacher. His flaws weren't obstacles to that message. They were part of the message. Maybe the real wisdom is learning to take what's useful and leave the rest. You don't have to adopt someone's entire lifestyle to benefit from their insights. You can appreciate Watts' understanding of consciousness without drinking yourself to death. The guy had profound insights about the nature of reality, the illusion of control, the interconnectedness of all things. Those insights don't become less true because he struggled with alcohol. Physics doesn't stop working because physicists are sometimes jerks. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Taking life advice from Alan Watts is probably no riskier than taking it from anyone else, including yourself. We're all just making it up as we go along. Some of us are more honest about it than others. Watts was refreshingly honest about being lost, confused, and struggling with basic human problems while simultaneously having deep insights about existence. That's not hypocrisy. That's complexity. That's what real human beings look like when you get past the marketing. In the end, maybe the most important thing Watts taught wasn't about enlightenment or wisdom or transcendence. Maybe it was about giving yourself permission to be imperfect while still reaching for something higher. Because if you're waiting until you've got your life completely figured out before you start exploring the big questions, you're going to be waiting a very long time. The cosmic joke is that none of us know what we're doing. Watts just had the courage to admit it while still trying to figure it out. And maybe that's enough.